run probably 300 to 350 stud breeding females. 95% of those are Poll Hereford and also 5% Angus stud females. And then we turn off a year's around about 2,500 steers and heifers to those various markets that I mentioned previously of branded grass-fed premium markets, EU accredited feeder markets and live breeding females to China. I'm a independently elected Southern representative, so I don't have any ties to any organisation. I can go in there with a clear mind and represent the entire beef industry. So directly elected Southern member. I'm also the chairman of the PCAS, which is the Pasture Fed Cattle Accreditation System steering committee, which is certainly something that's relevant to my business here on farm and a lot of my bull clients also. As a younger member of Cattle Council and getting the opportunity at this age to be a directly elected member, it was certainly something that I've grasped with both hands and enjoying every minute of it. My priorities and goals on being on Cattle Council is to certainly bring the grass-fed branding and systems into the spotlight and make sure that our industry certainly has a top tier level of certification with regards to grass-fed branding. As all beef producers know and also consumers in the city are starting to recognise that grass-fed, pasture-fed is certainly a premium product and something unique to Australia. So I am concerned as a producer that the name grass-fed, pasture-fed could be bastardised through the various production chains and the meat value chains. So we at Cattle Council certainly have to have that as a priority to make sure that the PCAS system is not only Australian leading but world leading in determining what a consumer is getting and what a consumer is paying for is actually it. So I'm very excited to be part of PCAS and driving it through this not only introduction phase but probably the next phase in developing it in the markets. Being a board director at Cattle Council of Australia and a young person coming in and learning my way in the agri-politics and the industry side of things is just the scope that Cattle Council has to cover. I believe Cattle Council sits on 90 committees throughout the industry, and just the various issues that come up that you don't even think about as a grass-fed producer. When you're driving around the paddock checking cows or doing cattle work, you know, it's something that didn't even cross my mind before I entered the realm of Cattle Council. And you know, from biosecurity issues to trade issues to certification issues to language and standards, it's just the depth that Cattle Council has to cover is certainly something that surprised me. CCA, it's great access to the upper echelons of the decision making within the agricultural industry. Attended free trade discussions in China, Korea and Japan with the Minister for Agriculture, Barnaby Joyce. It's certainly something that is an ongoing process is Cattle Council developing relationships with the decision makers and expressing the views of the grass-fed industry to make sure that we're at the forefront of change and innovation from a government perspective and a funding perspective, and we're always there in the front of their minds. With developments of free trade agreements, they've not only enhanced by the National Livestock Identification Scheme, NLIS, and Meat Standards Australia, MSA, I have absolutely no doubt that they're seen as world leading, and initiatives like that are certainly fostered and grown by Cattle Council has certainly enabled us access to these markets and the free trade agreements, not only in Asia right now, but there's certainly some exciting ones coming around the corner. Cattle Council certainly has a focus on youth and developing youth within the beef industry and wider beef industry. I've been accepted with open arms, and age is not an issue, and it's certainly enhanced by the wonderful program which is Rising Champions program, and Cattle Council as a whole should be congratulated for its fostering of the younger generation, the next generation in the beef industry. And it's not only on-farm producers, but it's developing relationships with people right throughout whether it be in the processing sector, whether it be in the services sector, or whether it be actually grassroots farmers. As a producer, we're evolving not only on production levels but genetic levels and production levels. It's certainly something that is evolving, and Cattle Council of Australia is no different. It's an entity that is constantly evolving and moving with the times, and the pressures on Cattle Council to service the grass-fed industry is changing basically day by day. We're exciting times at Cattle Council at the moment. We're moving to a directly elected board model, so the grass-fed producers can actually have a say and nominate people who they want on the board and feel probably more connected. Yeah, it's actually remarkable what Cattle Council has achieved on what I would say is a shoestring budget. The 90 committees, the various industry tasks, it is remarkable to me as a producer. So an increase and a sustainable funding model, I guess sustainable is the key word. So programs can be budgeted for, and we know and we can prioritise what needs to be done in the industry, and we can also encompass everyone across the board. Cattle Council would be able to have a greater influence on the beef industry than what we currently have. So we've got the programs in place. We just need a sustainable funding model to move them forward and evolve with the industry. Cattle Council is all about protection in terms right throughout the supply chain, from language and standards, and developing relationships with the supply chain from exporters to processors all the way through, and talking to our industry as a whole to make a sustainable and prosperous beef industry into the future. Cattle Council is certainly playing, and hopefully in the future will be playing a bigger role in developing that.